Good evening, everyone, and welcome to what is an absolutely fantastical special show tonight. Myself, Manny, hi, how are you today?
How you doing, everybody? I'm fine, thank you very much.
Fantastic. And Paul, who you will often see on Extra Time. Are you right, Paul?
I'm very well, thanks. Yeah, evening, everybody.
So I'm a co-host tonight, and we're joined by a very special person tonight. Thank you so much, Mr. Tim Spiers. Many of you will remember Tim from all the coverage he gave at the local Express and Star, and a couple of years ago moved over to The Athletic, and he's the official Wolves Athletic correspondent. Tim, good evening to you.
How's it going, guys? Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you so much for making your debut. I think because we've got loads to get stuck into, Tim, and obviously myself, Manny, and Paul will be sending some questions over to you. But we've got loads to get stuck into. But before we get on to that, obviously, can you explain to everyone the difference between what you were doing at the Express and Star and how the Athletic is different?
Blimey. The Athletic sort of takes a different approach to journalism, I guess. A bit of a wider view, analytical view. You know, the Express and Star and all, you know, the excellent local papers that are out there kind of cover every cough and spit of the club. You know, it's match reports, player ratings, press conferences, contract extensions, injury news. It's like it's everything. It's full on. Like, it's an amazing job. I absolutely loved it. I didn't want to do it forever because it's massively time consuming. And yeah, the Athletic, like I said, it's a bit more of a step back, really. You know, we aim to do sort of 2, 3 or 4 sort of, you know, big reads every week and take a look at a particular issue. Our sort of bread and butter is to take like an analytical look at every aspect of the club, produce pieces that are a bit more timeless, really. You know, like a profile of Raul Jimenez's career, or a report on how the players recover from injuries, you know, so that you're not just reading it on one day and then the next day it's old news. You know, it's something that you might be able to read for a few months or even years, you know, down the line. So, yeah, we look at features, interviews, reports, investigations, and just try and inform and tell the reader something they didn't know, you know, before they started reading that piece. That's the kind of aim of it, really, whether that's some kind of off-the-record info, or some kind of a statistic maybe that people don't know, or looking at Matt Jackson's loan job this week. I spent most of the day with Matt Jackson last week, and yeah, fantastic access. The club are extremely helpful in that regard, and so yeah, the longer word count as well kind of allows you to sort of entertain as well if you can the reader. So it's still a really young company. I appreciate people might not know a lot about it yet. It's only been going for 6 years, 3 years in the UK. But even if you don't like what I write, some of the stuff on there is absolutely astonishing. You know, it's the best journalism I've ever read. So yeah, I'd encourage everyone to give it a go. Certainly.
Well, I'm a subscriber of the Athletic, Tim, and I read most of your pieces, and it's just brilliant to give everyone a bit of a background. So you know, I think you just drop on the Athletic website, and there's different offers on there if people want to get involved with that. But it's certainly very, very interesting. In fact, like today, the financials came out today on Wolves. We're going to get stuck into that. Before we get started, just get a bit of background, just get a little bit of overall thoughts from Manny and Paul on, and then to yourself on starting with yourself first, Manny, on how you think the season's gone so far.
Season, to be honest, we seem to be stuck. Well, I think we've done really well overall. You know, where we are is probably higher than what most people expected us to be. But I think the one frustrating thing is we seem to be flitting from styles of playing. How do we want to play? You know, we've had some really good in-your-face, front foot performances where we've created lots of chances, failed to score. And then we've had almost, you know, back to the bad old days of the last few months of like Nuno's reign, where we're sitting back and just inviting pressure and hanging on and hoping our goalkeeper and defence, which they have, saved us. And, you know, particularly with if you looked at the last 2 games, you know, the lineup, it sort of summed up the season for me. You know, we had a lineup that surprised everybody at West Ham, and the match against Arsenal, again, we went 1-0 up and we just went back into our shells. We found it hard to get out. We found it hard to retain the ball. I feel like our midfielders have played further forward this season, but then in some games they've been sitting on top of the defence again. So I still think, he's only 26 games into his career at Wolves. Bruno Lage, that's not a huge amount of time. And I think he's still finding his way. And whether that's having the right personnel in the long term, bringing a different type of player in to play the way he wants to in the summer, I don't know. But at the moment, I'm happy with the performance and the position, and that we've been challenging for, we've been dreaming a top 4. Let's be honest, that's a bit of a pipe dream, and we can all have those dreams. That's a real big step to take. I still think we've got a chance to get into 7th, maybe 6th, at a chance. We've got a good run of matches. So
all in all, pretty good. And
really positive. Yeah.
Dreaming is for free, Manny. And Paul, been to a couple of away games with you. The most recent one, West Ham away at the weekend. What's your take on the season so far? I think this will probably be quite interesting insight as well for Tim, obviously.
He summed it up really well. What I'll add to that is this time last week, about 8:30 last Thursday, we were 5th. And if someone had said that to you in August, you'd have been astonished that would have been the case. So then the first thing that I want to say is that I'm really grateful that our team are actually in the hunt and even been talked about as a potential Champions League contender. It's incredible, really. Manny made a great point about Bruno being new to the Premier League. You wouldn't really say he's an experienced manager. So I think that means you are going to see fluctuations. It's a bit of trial and error. He hasn't really made wholesale changes for a Premier League match like he did against West Ham, but I don't think he'll be doing that again anytime soon, given how flat the performance was. So overall, I'm delighted with our points haul. Our defence has been one of the best in Europe, and that's the bedrock of what you build a successful team on. However, we must admit that at times it is frustrating, particularly to name a few matches: Norwich away, Crystal Palace away, Norwich at home in the Cup, West Ham, where we often see plenty of the ball, but there's just no real sting in the tail in the final third. And can you imagine if we'd got a striker who was on 10 goals, a wide forward who was on 5 or 6 goals? We would be 4th or 3rd even, maybe. No, it's just tinged with that little bit of frustration that what could have been. But on the whole, I'm delighted and I'm really excited about March coming up.
Well, that's fantastic. And thanks for that, guys, because I think that's really interesting. I think, obviously, there's lots of different opinions in regards to Wolves. When we're winning, everything's great. When we don't win, there can be sometimes a bit of a meltdown, especially over on Twitter. Tim, obviously, you're a born and bred Wolves fan as well, reporting on the Wolves. Probably a bit of both frustration for you, because at times you want to really celebrate and like a fan, but obviously you're there to do a job. I mean, from following Wolves this season and obviously the change to Bruno Lage and how we started, what's your general take and feeling on the season up until this point?
I think you've got to take yourselves back to June, really, when he was appointed, and nobody really knew who this guy was. And even if you did know who he was, you had no idea how he was going to do in the Premier League. His only previous job was at Benfica. And I think it's important to state, Benfica's his club. He'd been there more than a decade. He knew it inside out. So I'm not saying it was easy by any means when he came in, but it helped that he knew the players, he knew the league, it was his country. So I think for him to come to the Premier League, I know he's been an assistant over here before, nobody knew how he was going to do. And I think most fans would have accepted just progress this year, up from 13th back towards mid-table and looking up. So to get them where they are right now, it's a massive achievement. But on the other hand, I would say the players that they've got, this is about their level, in my opinion, and that's been proved historically with 2 7th-place finishes, a Europa League quarter-final, and being 6th in the table last season before when Jimenez suffered his injury, which set along, a chain of events that really derailed them. So 6th, 7th, 8th is where this group is at, in my opinion. But I am surprised and really pleased for Bruno Lage that he's managed to sort of re-energise them so quickly. And I think re-energized is probably the correct word, really, when you speak to the players and how they've responded to him tactically and him as a person. He's very different to Nuno. And also, you've got to remember, on May the whatever it was last year, when they were losing to Man United on the last day, and you've got people in tears in the stands. You've got staff giving Nuno a guard of honour in tears. You've got players in tears, and you've got Nuno's in tears. And I remember sat there thinking, who on earth is going to follow this guy? And what a job they've got on their hands. But I think the fact that he's so different to Nuno, Nuno was very sort of lovable, and he was arm around the shoulder and charismatic, and the players loved that side of him. And, he could always get a result out of him. Bruno, is very much tactically focused. The guy's written books on tactics. He's very intelligent, and everything I've heard from players and from staff is that you won't find a harder working manager than him. I mean, he's there all hours of every day. He's got a very diligent and detailed backroom team, and I think his tactical approach. We've seen it just in the past few weeks. Ralph Rangnick and Antonio Conte have both had to change their formations during the game to adapt to what Wolves are doing. So Manny rightly makes the point about, they're a bit different from one week to the next. I think he sets out individual game plans for each game. And the other thing I'd say for Bruno is that this is not his squad, and these are not the tactics that he wants to play, because we saw in pre-season what he really wants to do, which was a much higher line. It was very intense. It was very attacking. Remember those first 3 games of the season?
Unbelievable.
That's what he wants to do. But what he's done intelligently, in my view, is take a look at the squad and think, hang on, these guys aren't suited to what I want to do right now. So he's gone for a sort of a hybrid approach, and it's worked really well. But I think I'm really excited to see what he does next season. After another summer of recruitment, a full pre-season with new players and new tactics. I know he wants to play 4 at the back. He doesn't feel able to do that at the moment. So,
interestingly, Tim, one of the questions from a caller called Jeff said, "Are we likely to see Bruno still looking to play with his preferred back four? Do you think he'll stick with the system?" From what you're saying, you think that is where he's heading?
Yeah, I think when he came in, he wanted to play 2 formations this season. Either 3-4-3 or 3-5-2 and 4-2-3-1. That's what he came in with the aim of doing, but didn't feel he had the players to do that, and recruitment wasn't a high turnover recruitment in the summer. So he wants to play 2 formations, one of which would be 4-2-3-1, and you can see with the attacking talent they've got that they would be suited to that. But defensively, I don't think the personnel are there right now. And interestingly, he even said after West Ham, I asked him about, why did you struggle to create chances today? You had 14 shots, 60% possession of the ball. Why did you really create, no chances? And he said, I can only work with the profile of players that I've got. So, a lot of the players in this squad were brought in for 3-4-3, wingers that go wide, that don't naturally come inside. And I think he wants a dynamic midfielder, and I think he wants quick defenders to play with a high press. So a lot of those things just aren't at his disposal right now. So considering all that, I honestly think he's done a fantastic job. And I haven't met him much because of COVID, but having, spoke to him a lot in press conferences, I'm really impressed with his manner. Clearly a very intelligent man, and someone who's thinking long-term as well as short-term.
Well, Tim, you asked, you just talked about his formation, and Bruno, candidly, and sometimes, you probably think, why has he said that? Has said almost like Manny had a go at Fosun, maybe for not giving him all the players that he wants. And is that his frustration, or is he being held back, or did he expect to get more players in by now to play the way he wants to play? Or?
I think he wanted more players in. I would say that no head coach has the perfect squad, and that they always want more players. And I doubt we'll see much more of that from Bruno. I think. Obviously I follow every press conference closely, and right at the start of January, he said, on the eve of the window, I want a defender, a winger, and a striker this window. And a week later, the same question put to him, and he just went completely, we'll try and do what we can. I think it was very obvious that someone had a word in between those. But to be fair, you don't want to be airing your dirty linen in public. It's not a good look. I thought it was a really bad look for the club on the eve of the window be kind of making these demands. It doesn't really do much good for him or Fosun or for the club. So it's always better these things are sort of behind closed doors. It's great for the fans to hear, what positions he wants to strengthen and whatever. But I don't think we'll see much of that in the future. There was a definite shift towards the end of January, and he kept pretty quiet then.
What's the relationship like then with him and the board? If he has said those little snippets, is there frustration? Is there a little bit of, when you employ a new manager at an interview stage will probably say, this is my vision, this is the way I want to play, this is how I see it. And obviously, if that's not matched straight away, well, not straight away, but in the way he probably hoped that it would have been matched, is his relationship good and strong? Do you see that? I don't know.
Yeah, I certainly think that the relationship is positive. Scott Sellers, obviously in the middle of that, has got a really important job. Sort of Kevin Thelwell in between Nuno and Jeff Shee. You can't underestimate that role really, because there's going to be demands from one and pushback from the other. So you need someone in the middle. Scott Sellers has got a really important job there. So yeah, in terms of recruitment, I mean, I don't think he'd be happy with what he got in January, because the defender who came in was ultimately Totti Gomez, who's now back in the 23s. The winger who came in was Chiquinho, who's now back in the 23s, and there was no striker. So, but on the other hand, Scott Sellers or Jeff or whoever would say, well, you've got 5 or 6 players who are out injured then, who are now all back in the squad, including Johnny and Neto, of course. So, I think the squad looks great right now in terms of numbers, leaving senior players off the bench. But in terms of the players Bruno wants, it's not quite there yet. Having said all that, we all know January is a horrible month to buy. And
that's what I was going to say. January is a difficult month. I know there's a lot of Wolves fans that were disappointed, but I think there was 9 other Premier League clubs that didn't do any business at all.
Ask West Ham fans, Dave. They're absolutely, they didn't, they've got one striker on their books, haven't they, Antonio? If he gets injured, they're in like a Raul situation.
And it was exactly like a Raul thing. And to be fair, we had a very good January. And I think had we had a poor January, that would have been exasperated. And Paul, feel free to jump in with any questions that you have. But whilst we're we're talking about this, the financial report has come out for Wolves today. They've said they've obviously made an £18.5 million profit. I think it's fair to say that the accounts are slightly skew-whiffed because obviously some of the Premier League games were played after the financial end of May. But Fosun have said to have capitalised and transformed 126.5 million of shareholder loans into equity, as they already own Wolves in its entirety. Do you know how this works? Is it a big gesture from Fosun, or does it just take
as Twitter says, explain in football terms?
Yeah. So is it so that Wolves can borrow more money? I mean, we are delving into financial stuff, so it's probably a bit of a deep question, Tim. But I don't know what your take is on that.
Yeah, I'm no accountant, Dave, but obviously, I look at the accounts every year, and I've done since sort of 2015. So I can read the basics, and then we've got Matt Slater, who's our financial expert at the Athletic, who's taught me through a bit of it, and just from speaking to people at the club as well, it's not a big deal really, and I don't think the club would make a big deal out of it, to be honest. The fact that this money, which was interest free, a loan from Fosun to the club of 120 odd million. Interest free. They weren't asking for it to be paid back, and it's now been transferred into equity. And I'm told this is very common in football business terms. Nottingham Forest did the same thing this week, apparently. So the accounts look a lot better for it, because in terms of money owed, that's now 126 million pound less, and the accounts look pretty healthy to me. Considering we had Matt Wild on the podcast that me and Jackie Oatley used to do last February. And he was telling us about, the many problems a club will have during the pandemic. And he said, basically, we're planning for a worst case scenario. We're planning for no fans all season. We're planning, TV money maybe not coming in, planning for worst case. And then any bonuses you get are great. So I think that's what they've done. It's very shrewd, obviously, financial planning. And I guess the easiest marker really is to compare them to other clubs. And I think Villa made a 30-odd million loss. Leicester made a loss. Arsenal made a loss of about 120 million. Villa's cumulative losses now are approaching 600 million, which
600 million.
Which is not this year, cumulatively over many years, which is only behind Man City and Chelsea. So, fair play to them. They've gone down a very different route. But if Villa were to somehow get relegated, they would be in absolute
serious trouble,
world of trouble. Whereas Wolves are on a safe, sound financial footing, and they've made a small profit, and things look very good for them. And I know that fans will come back and say, well, that means that they could have spent another 50 million last summer and gone slightly into the red over the year. It's not really for us or anyone to tell them how to run the business, but I think the way that they are running the business is putting Wolves on a very sound financial footing. The argument then comes, how much should they be spending? But I think first and foremost, they've got the house in order, and they're clearly still looking for the long term in everything that they do, and they state that in the accounts as well. Just how they're searching for European football. But they're not going to put the club's financial future at risk.
Fantastic. And Paul, have you got anything that you'd want to come in with on that point?
I think that makes a lot of sense about them being quite cautious. We've seen other clubs really struggle. If you think back a few years, the likes of Leeds and Portsmouth, we'd never want to put ourselves in that kind of position. But at the same time, you can say, we've been so close. We finished 7th on 2 occasions. We're in a great position this season. If we speculate to accumulate a bit more, could that lead us to take that next step? But I think overall you have to be appreciative that the owners do seem to have the club's best interests at heart, and also the fact that they're not after just a quick fix. They're after year-on-year growth, which I think stands the club in really good stead moving forwards.
What I would say, Dave, again, just look at the numbers today, just to put in context where Wolves are really, just in terms of revenue, so how much money that they're bringing in. They're about the same as Villa. I think Wolves were £190 million revenue. Villa were about 180. Leicester were then at 220, but you've got an FA Cup win in there, and obviously Leicester are very, very well established, Premier League winners, etc. 220. Then you get to Arsenal, you're looking more at sort of 380 million revenues for 1 year. So that's more than double Wolves. And Liverpool then go into sort of 400, 500 million range. For Wolves to be competing with Arsenal and losing to a 96-minute goal, I think you've just got to take a step back sometimes and put it in perspective, the teams that they're trying to chase, and also that they're trying to do it in a self-sustainable way. So how are Wolves going to make money to compete with Arsenal? When you look at how much money they make from their stadium, etc., they're trying to do it a different way with esports, with fashion, music as well. It's a very different route. Outside investment from America. It's a long-term view that's going to take a few years to sort of bear fruit, really. But I think when fans are rightly moaning about defeats and wanting the team to push on, you've got to look at who they're competing with to get up to that level. Arsenal earning double the money that Wolves do, and then you look at teams like Everton and Villa and Newcastle and spending so much money, to try and compete with Wolves, and Wolves are beating them all at the moment. So I hate to kind of come on and beat the drum, but I like to put things in perspective. Really, they're doing a good job.
Have you sensed since Fosun came into the club and this big hoo-ha, Chinese owners, billionaires, one of the richest owners in the Premier League, took us up in the Championship. We're going to be the next Man City. There's all this talk, wasn't there? There was all this hoo-ha, maybe from the fans, maybe from Jeff a little bit as well, initially. So have you noticed a slight change of approach, like this slow and steady stepping stone growth approach?
Yeah, a big change. It's sort of in 2019. Jeff Shee doesn't do many interviews, and when he does, it's because he's got something to say. And in 2019, he spoke to the Financial Times and kind of set out this new approach that they want to be self-sustainable. They want outside investment to help, which took almost 3 years, to come with this announcement with Peak Six that people might remember, sort of later last year. So I think they would probably regret sort of saying that when they came in, that we want to be Man City in 10 years, because it comes back to bite them, doesn't it? Obviously. Yeah. It's definitely a longer term view. They want the academy to be self-sustainable. They want the first team to be self-sustainable. And we've also seen a change in approach, Manny, that year with the stadium, because they came out in May of that year with these unbelievable Molineux plans. The vision that Laurie Dalrymple presented at the end of season awards that year of how Molineux might look in the future and a
I
golden
remember it, Tim. Wow.
yeah, honestly, a golden walkway from
to
the
That's right.
stadium and hotels and restaurants and casinos. And Dalrymple went on record and said, we want Molineux to be a 365-day a year stadium, for people to come to, and for obviously the club to make money constantly.
I'll tell
That's
you what,
changed since then, and partly to do with the pandemic, but also I think that they realise if they spend hundreds and hundreds of millions on the stadium, it's going to take an awful long time to earn their money back on that. And at the end of the day, they're an investment company.
I'll tell you what, Tim, because this is one of the questions that have been brought up, and the other one is on the financial, is about Fosun's, have they backed off? But let's just, whilst you brought that up on Molineux, obviously you were right. We had this beautiful golden vision of Molineux that we were going to do. There was the discussions with the council, and obviously most of the fan base want to see Molineux stay where it is. There's obviously the other option that would be built up near the M54. They've had the issues with the temporary stand, which is now back up and running. They're talking about having another 500-seater stand in the other corner. The issues as well with the Steve Bull stand, with the fans there, and the queues and the concourses and the spaces. And Jeff Shee said on his on the talk with Jeff last year, he talked about Molineux and he talked about the interest rates. The one thing that I couldn't get from when he said that, the interest rates at the time were, to me, as low as they've ever been. And how much has this been put on the back? Obviously, the pandemic's come in, and other people would say, well, that's a good time to build it because you've got no fans to displace. How much on the back burner do you think this Molineux development is? What's happening with the council? Is there because the plans are drawn up apparently? What's happening with the council? Is the problems with the council and the land development and Asda, or have they just shelved it?
I don't think there were problems with land development. And in answer to building a stadium in a pandemic, I mean, I remember speaking to the club at the time, and they were like, "Why on earth would we build a stadium when we can't have fans sitting in it? And we've got no idea how long this pandemic is going to last." And I guess that makes complete sense to me.
Yeah.
I think their approach at the moment is, and interest rates, you're right. And I interviewed Jeff in September, and he repeated that. It's on the back burner, but it is still on the agenda. And I think they're going to look at it every year basically and see where they're at financially, and see where the squad is at. And if the squad needs £100 million of investment one summer, then obviously they wouldn't want to be spending money on the stadium at the same time. And yeah, it's. I don't know when they do it, because the stadium's full every week and they've got an 11,000 seater season ticket waiting list already. So personally, from a very layman's point of view, I think they obviously just need to get it done as soon as possible. I don't think there's any issues with the land, like I say, but they want to wait for the right financial moment to strike. But yeah, a lot of things have been said in public, and I think they're probably rowing back from that now, and they don't want to be giving updates every few months because the situation changes a lot. So I think they're just going to wait now until they're ready to properly push the button, and then we'll all find out about it publicly. But I don't think they want to be giving updates, every few months. The corner stand, as you mentioned, between the Steve Bull and the South Bank, they put planning permission in for that. Then the pandemic hit; they haven't picked that back up again. I know they desperately want to make improvements to the Steve Bull stand. The way it was explained to me was that it would cost so much money to knock down and rebuild the Steve Bull stand that it would take 20 years for them to see a return on that investment. And again, like I said, we don't know if Fosun are going to be here in 20 years, and they're an investment company at the end of the day. Now, the fact that the Steve Bull stand is sinking, and literally is sinking. Ever so slightly, but it is, and there's brickwork in there from the Victorian days, and the executive boxes in there, and I've sat in them myself for a game, are just not fit for purpose for a League One club, let alone Premier League. And the concourses are terrible. I don't know about the queues because I haven't sat there in a few years, but you still see people talking about that. The leg room, it's just not fit for. It's not fit for purpose whatsoever, and people from the club have said that. So why they're not doing that, I don't know. But like I said, Jeff Shee has stated, or the club have stated, that it would take so long to get their money back that they're hesitant to do it, and the pandemic's put everything on hold. But hopefully we'll get some kind of update soon.
Do you want to comment on that, Paul or Manny?
No, I just thought, the point that Tim makes right at the start, and you actually realise, finishing 7th twice and now being in a similar position now, and actually that is actually where we are. And when you see the stadium rocking and it's full, you don't want a situation where we haven't established ourselves yet on the pitch, and then we build a 40,000 seat stadium, and then we've got 5,000 empty seats. You'd rather have a packed, full stadium. But I'm a Steve Ball season ticket holder, and we get in early just to avoid the queues. They have put in extra turnstiles. They've done little improvements, but it is pretty dilapidated. But as soon as you sit on your seat and you watch good football, I think people do forget about all that, and that's the product, isn't it, that we've gone to see. And then I think that's the frustration the fans have. They want to see that the investment then on the pitch. We need a midfielder. Where is it? We need the striker. Where is it? Because we're not doing it on the ground. So this summer, I see this summer especially, being pretty key in certain areas. I think, bringing in. I don't want 7 or 8 players bringing in. I just don't think it works. You've seen that with teams like Villa. You've seen it with Fulham. They bought a boatload of players, spent 100 million quid, got relegated. You only need a couple of quality players, just gives everything and everybody a lift. So as long as we see that improvement on the pitch, then I agree. The ground can happen when it happens, and when we're in better times. And I think Jeff Shee using that percentage thing it was almost like, I'm going to tell him this because it is on hold, and that's a good enough. And I don't think he really means that interest rates aren't low enough. I think it's just that's on the back burner at the moment. So this is what we're concentrating on. And we haven't got owners like Chelsea or Man City who treat their clubs a bit like a plaything, and it's a bit of a hobby for them. They are a company. They want to see a return. They want to put investment in, and they want to see something back. And the pandemic and everything has clearly held them back, scaled their plans back, and that's what we've got. And it's still not bad. Okay, it's not. We dream of all these big players coming to our clubs and playing really well and competing, but it takes a lot of time, effort, and money, and they're doing it their way. And as long as you see that improvement year in, year out, I think that's, I look at the team from last year, virtually every player, apart from maybe Raul Jimenez, who struggled since his injury, every player has actually improved. Semedo and Aït-Nouri couldn't defend, but they were good in attack. Now they're actually really good defenders. The back three, the goalkeeper position has improved. Martinho and Neves are having better seasons than they've had for a couple of years. So there has been improvements on the pitch, and that's what we've got to focus on, those improvements. And if Bruno can do that with the people he's already got, what can
Fantastic.
he do?
Yeah, fantastic. I think some good points there, Tim. I mean, obviously wanted you to come back on some of those points with Manny. Do you still think it's completely off the table that because you talked about if they do up the capacity at Molineux where it is, they've got to reduce it to start with, and you say they've got 11,000 season ticket. Is it definitely off the table? Do you think of that, keeping Molineux where it is and then moving to that brand new stadium just a little bit outside the city centre, which obviously caused a lot of alarm? Do you think that's off the agenda completely?
Certainly, the last time I spoke to Jeff Shee in September, it was off the table. I think they'd looked at that and realised that they can't, and that they won't take Wolves out of their spiritual home. I think Manny makes a really good point about improving the team before the stadium, which is something levelled at the previous owner. A huge criticism of Steve Morgan that he built the stand instead of building the team. But I would say, just on the Steve Ball stand, I mean, I don't know if brings shame on the club is too strong a word, but it's absolute shambles. It really is. And to put the away fans in there every week, and that's their take of what Molineux is like. There's nothing outside the back of it. It's a terrible view. I think it affects the atmosphere because the away fans struggle to get chants going down there because the way it's spread out. And you might say that's to Wolves' advantage, but I don't know. I think it impacts the atmosphere. It impacts the seats right in the upper stand cullis. because they can't sell those seats in the corner because the roof's in the way. And even the Billy Wright was built in like 93, 94, and that looks
it's not
tired to me now. The carpet in there looks like, stuff like that. But the corporate offering is they just haven't got it compared to other Premier League clubs, and we know how important that's going to be. Again, coming back to revenues, for Wolves to make money, they've got to offer a much better corporate experience. I've not done the North Bank corporate experience, but I'm sure that's of a decent standard. But it's got to be reflected elsewhere in the stadium.
Absolutely. And Paul, any thoughts on the Molineux thing before we move on to a big question about Fosun's commitment coming up?
Yeah, I mean, like you've said, the Steve Bull stand, it's becoming more and more urgent as the seasons go on. What will be the tipping point for it? We don't know, but it's hard. It's hard for Fosun to win if they decide to spend a fortune on stadium redevelopment to the detriment of not signing more players, and we don't do very well as a result. Everyone will moan about that. But on the same token, if they keep investing money into the team and they let the Steve Bull stand get worse and worse, then equally people won't be happy about that either. But what I will say is that we're certainly not alone in the Premier League about having a poor stand. Leeds is a really good example. The away end there, I was actually frightened recently. On the upper tier, there's one entrance and one exit to the seats. And to me, it almost feels like a matter of time before something quite nasty happens there. Crystal Palace.
Year of Torino
Crystal Palace, Paul, and Goodison Park. Horrific.
Everton was the other one that I was
just can't see anything. Yeah,
I know they're moving, Everton, but my point was that we're not alone in this situation. And like I said, it's just a difficult one that Fosun can actually win with it. But I think the time will have to come where the Steve Bull stand can't go on in its present form.
Someone's just asked a question about, Man City have got this dedicated second stadium for their academy and their women's. They've asked about the women's team because if they do get promoted, I hear that Castlecroft wouldn't be fit for the championship. That's what I'm hearing. I don't know whether that's true. So could you ever see, Fosun's commitment to building something for them, or would they just be playing, maybe at Telford or Agborough, or, has anything ever mentioned about the women's development? Because they're doing fantastically, aren't they?
Oh, they're doing.
What about the CKW Stadium? Yeah, if they got promoted to the championship, it wouldn't meet standards apparently.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't be able to play there in the championship. I'm sure that they are. They're looking at that issue right now. Not that promotion is guaranteed. No, if people, for people who don't know, if you look at the league table and they're absolutely smashing it, well, they'd have a one-off playoff against
the winners,
winners of the Southern League at the end of the year, and Southampton, I think, the top of the league at the moment, and they're supposed to be very decent. So promotion not guaranteed, but if they do get promoted, they can't play at Castlecroft. Telford, Agborough, I mean, I don't think they want to go back to Hensford. They left there for a reason. As for a purpose-built stadium, I know that's something they've looked at in the past. A dedicated under-23 stadium. Again, that's a good question. Next time I'm with Jeff or someone else, I'll ask what the latest is with that. But I'm guessing they assume that it's not financially viable at this stage. They've done a lot of work at Compton. People won't have seen. I haven't seen. I've been to Compton today, but I've barely been for 2 years. But because of the pandemic, but they have built like 7 or 8 full-size pitches, which reflect the same spec as Molineux now. Yeah, an awful lot of money invested, and they have actually got like a show pitch with a few seats and a couple of dugouts. It's not enough for like spectators, but enough for a few scouts or media or whatever. So so they've made improvements at Compton, but yeah, I think a purpose-built small facility for the women's teams, 23 teams would be absolutely perfect.
And that would be something that you think they would have at Compton or somewhere else in the city.
I don't think they'd be able to have it at Compton.
Not space.
Even just looking at it right now, there's no room there at the moment. So that's elsewhere in the city. I mean, God knows. But yeah, Agborough's a nice setup for the 23s, but it's not ideal going sort of 40 minutes down the road.
No.
And the pitch there obviously really cuts up at this time of year with all the games that Kidderminster have got to play as well. So they had issues like that at Telford, which is why they left. So yeah, they could really do with a permanent solution to that one, as could a lot of Premier League clubs.
And we'll come back onto a bit more on Wolves women. The big question, now we're going to get into some transfer policies and some of the players. You know what some of the Wolves fan base are like. Everyone's got lots of opinions, and some people get more frustrated than others about the perceived lack of investment from Fosun. A couple of questions here to clear up. First one is the FFP handicap from the Europa League still hanging over, or we're clear of that? And do you expect Fosun to back Wolves strongly in the transfer market this summer?
FFP, they're past that now, but it's never really been a big deal within the club. It's never been mentioned in any club accounts, for example. We're talking about club accounts today. It's not, it's not like there's a line in there saying, we were hampered by FFP this year. I think people have maybe think it's a big deal than it is within the club. I don't think it's really hampered their spending, certainly not from what I'm told. In terms of spending this summer, I think they'll probably spend a bit more. There's more TV money this year. They've made a little profit, as we talked about earlier. But it'll probably, if you're looking at big spending, then you're probably looking at big sales to help finance that. They spent 169 million net spend in the first 2 seasons of the Premier League. That's net spend, 169 million. That was never going to continue every year. And now, I think we're looking at the sort of model of last summer when Jota and Doherty's sales financed the buys of Semedo and Silva. You can argue all night about whether they were the right additions for that money, but that's the kind of path that they're looking to go down. They ideally would like a low net spend, I think, pretty much every year to help.
Are we going to spend 25 million on Trinko, Tim?
That's another question that's high on the agenda.
We got it. I saw your tweet, Tim. I did on Sunday saying that's the first time I've heard Trinko's name today on something.
Bruno spoke of Trinko, and he said he adds something different to the other wingers. He said, to be honest, Trinko is a winger who can do best as a third midfielder when I need that. Wolves obviously have the option to buy Trinko in the summer for 25 million. What do you think of his performances, like what Manny says? And if we're going to buy, at what price, if any?
I don't think they'll. I'd be amazed if they took this. Someone will clip this up and tweet it when they buy him in the summer. But I'd be amazed if they spent 25 million on a fourth choice forward. Yeah. With Neto, Podence, and they've bought Hwang now. They've effectively bought him. He'll come in the summer. For a guy who's got no goals, no assists, and he does a decent defensive job for the team, and that's why he plays. And his defensive numbers are good. He's made more interceptions than Conor Cody this season. And I know Cody sits in between the two centre halves, so he often doesn't see a lot of the ball. But he does more defensive work than the other forwards, and that's backed up in the numbers, and that's why he gets picked. Well, that's why Bruno picks him anyway. It's not why I'd pick him. I feel like the benefits of Podence and now Neto in an attacking sense far outweigh the defensive benefits you get from someone like Trinko, who to me, he doesn't look well suited to the Premier League. I think he'd probably do really well elsewhere, and a little bit like Bettini has done at Porto this year. I just don't think he's suited to Premier League football. I spoke to someone who coached him when Wolves signed him last summer, and they said his ability is frightening. And I've heard that from people at Wolves, that on the training ground his ability is ridiculous, as in the things he can do with the ball. He's like a nutmeg king. He's near the top of the nutmeg charts in the Premier League. Yeah. So he's great at that. He's great at his fancy flicks. But the coach told me, he said the only thing he really lacks is physicality. And I remember saying to him, well, isn't that an issue in the Premier League then? And he said, well, hopefully his other attacking attributes will outweigh the fact that he's physically not particularly strong or quick. But I think we've found that the intensity and the physicality of the Premier League has just been too much for him. So I'd be surprised if they spent 25 million on a fourth choice forward.
Would they do something like what they did with Ait-Nouri? Because they obviously Ait-Nouri was a certain figure, and then they got him for cheaper. Or would you just
no?
Dave, you know what? I pretty Paul. Go on, tell us. But I reckon you could pick up a better winger from the Championship for about 6 million. I'm sure.
prime example, right? Someone like Jared Bowen, goals, assists, wasn't particularly expensive. Where would we be this season now if Trincao had contributed similar numbers to what he's contributed? And we can talk about him being a good technical player. Seen flashes of it maybe, but he's got the third highest discrepancy of expected goals. Basically, he's missed more expected goals than I think there's only 2 players above him. And his final ball in never looks dangerous. So in no shape or form, I do not want to see him sign in the summer. And I think it's a very clear picture across the fan base on that one.
I think like, you know, he's got his attributes and whatever, fine to be in the squad. But what annoys me is how he started more than any other winger. And then he goes and starts at West Ham when you've got Podence on the bench and Neto, I know they're looking to ease him back, on the bench. And I asked Bruno afterwards, you know, why so many changes today? What was it, fatigue? And he said no. He said he just wanted a bit more energy. Didn't call it fatigue.
There was no energy.
I'd rather have Podence at 80% than Trincao at 100 personally.
Yeah, I think he made too many changes at the weekend. I think if it had started with Podence, even if he could have only done 60 minutes, it would just didn't really look like doing anything until they both came on. So,
I think, you know, a few fans have mentioned, like Bruno, sometimes when he's made substitutions when we're chasing a game or made changes, that sometimes he just thinks, let's throw everybody on. And there's been a couple of occasions where he's had everybody on the pitch without really any sort of pattern and you know, whether it's a bit of panic, you know, trying to chase a game. And that's what West Ham reminded me of. He just sort of, we're not Man City or Liverpool where we can just make 5 changes and go to West Ham and beat them. We're not. We can only make the odd change here and there, and that be forced by injury, like the Semedo one. And that was just a terrible decision. And we all crossed our fingers. And, you know, to lose 1-0 and to be, as soon as we put our players on, we were stronger, you know, straight away.
There is an argument, another argument on Trincao. Look at Semedo last year, how he was struggling to fit in, and look at the impact that he's made. And obviously losing him when he got injured against Arsenal, went off. And I think he's rumoured to be out for 4 to 8 weeks, so he could have a better stick. But 25 million, I don't know. What do you buy into this? Because we want to move on from Trincao, because lots to talk about. But what do you buy into this swap deal for Adama? I just think that would be a really bad deal.
Stop it.
Paul. Yeah, well, I think we've said everything we need to do.
We're talking about selling to buy, Dave, and if we're selling to buy Trincao, and then we're back to square one, then, you know, I don't think anyone will really be. I actually gave him a bit of a chance at the start of the season. I thought he did okay in the first when we created all those chances, and he did have some gilt-head chances, you know, in the first 3 games especially. And maybe if he had scored the odd goal, that would have had the confidence flowing. Or, you know, players need that. And as he's struggled on, it's just, you look at him now and you think, we just can't. We can't have £25 million luxury players, like Tim says, at 4th choice, sitting on the bench that might play occasionally. We just can't.
I just want to say we've got well over 200 watching live on the show. And obviously, if you're listening to this back on the podcast or on catch up, thank you for joining us. And really appreciate you guys getting involved in the chat as well. Romain Saiss and Joe Moutinho, key players out of contract in the summer. Do you think they'll get new contracts from Wolves? And why hasn't it been done already, Tim?
Saiss, I mean, they tried last summer and he turned them down.
Right.
Obviously, the situation was a bit different then. He wasn't playing every single week. So I think it's not just a case of offering one and he'll sign it. He'll want to look at his options. What is he, 30, 31 now? Are Wolves looking to sign a centre-half in the summer? You know, yes, they are, again, like they sort of have been doing every window. So if they go out and sign Sven Botman, you know, who they still hold a really strong interest in, then what happens to Saiss? You know, is he suddenly on the bench having signed a 3-year contract? So yeah, but you know, he's had the best season of his Wolves career, and he's been here 6 years. So that's, you know, you don't say that lightly. And they do want him to stay, but I don't think it's just as simple as offering one and he will stay. And ditto Moutinho, that's one. Obviously, his agent is George Mendes, which makes it a slightly different situation. And I'd expect he would probably want 2 years rather than maybe one that Wolves might be willing to offer him. So that's another one to look at.
Because there's rumours of him going to Roma, isn't he? With his mate Patricio and Moutinho. That's been
he won't be short of offers, but I think the key thing is that they want Moutinho around the place. He's a massive, as you can imagine, massively influential in the dressing room. However, if Bruno's looking to change Wolves' style next season and go 4-2-3-1, I'm not saying Moutinho couldn't do it, but if people want him to sign Renato Sanchez, then all of a sudden Moutinho might think, well, okay, I'm only going to start 15 games this season. I'll go to Roma or wherever. So again, there's so many things that go into it, rather than just Wolves saying we want to keep him and Moutinho saying I'm happy here. There's also two others. I mean, Fernando Marçal, I would guess with Wolves' options at left wing back, he'd be unlikely to stay, especially given his injury record. Yeah. And then John Ruddy, which this comes up every year, and such a good backup. And I guess that's a question for the player more than the club, really. I think the club would like to keep him. Again, he's such a massive.
He's a good attitude around the pitch.
Honestly, just unbelievable. He's unbelievable for that group. But I guess the thing with John is, does he want to go out and play? It's been 4 years now since he played regularly. So, but this happens every year. So we'll wait and see.
Fantastic.
I don't think fans would mind losing the likes of Saiss and even Moutinho and people like John Ruddy if we bring other players in to strengthen the team. That's the key, isn't it? And if we bring those players in, and Saiss isn't going to play in a back four, let's be honest. If we go to back four, and that's what Bruno wants to do, and he brings in, and we've had Max Kilman playing brilliantly, Saiss ain't really going to get a look in. So, to lose someone like him isn't the biggest thing in the world, even though he has played really well. I think the big player in Wolves' minds is Ruben Neves, isn't he? He's our star player. He's the one that's, been here for 5 years, which I can't actually believe that he's actually spent 5 years, walking around West Park and Tetnall Pool and wherever else he goes. But he's been absolutely brilliant for us, and that's the one we want to stay forever and ever. And probably we all know that one day, some super club will come calling for him.
On Ruben Neves, Tim, how important do you think European football is next year to keeping him?
I don't know about next year. He'll want to go back to the Champions League one day. It's easy to forget he swapped Champions League football for the Championship.
Yeah.
To join Wolves. So he was thinking about his long-term career. There's been interest from him, from big clubs for a while, but they just haven't had the bid that they would have been willing to accept. Arsenal last summer really fancied him. He was their first choice at one point, but they didn't come in with the money. So the thing with Neves is they've got to get him tied down this summer, because they cannot have another Traore situation. That was an absolute nightmare, and it was quite a public nightmare of negotiations going on for 14 months and ultimately coming to nothing. I know.
Was it the value of his contract with Traore, or was it just that he wanted to go?
They offered him a really massive amount of money. I think he would have been either the top or the second top earner. But ultimately, he wanted to go, and ultimately he turned down a move to Spurs because he didn't want to play at right wing back, because he was desperate to go back to Barcelona. And fair play for him for doing that. Wolves have made a risky move because there's no loan fee involved, and Barcelona aren't paying his wages. But ultimately,
Barcelona are not paying his wages. I thought that they'd come out and said he was. So Wolves are paying for his wages to go.
Yeah, but he's. I guess the point to make with Traore is he's not earning a lot of money by Premier League standards and by Wolves' squad standards. He's on the same contract when he signed from Middlesbrough in 2018, when Wolves were a newly promoted club. So it's not a lot of money by modern standards. But obviously, the start he's made at Barcelona is the start that everybody wanted him to make, because they really hope that even if Barcelona don't sign him, the form that he shows there means that there'll be a massive market for him in the summer, and there just wasn't one in January. It was Spurs, Barca on loan, or nothing. But they've got to avoid that. I'm sure negotiations will be smoother with Neves, but they've got to avoid that situation happening again.
He's got
so
about 2 years
Barcelona. Sorry,
Go on,
Dom.
Yeah,
Paul.
2024 is when his contract's up. Yeah.
Go on, Paul.
So Traore really wants to sign for Barcelona. That's his team. That's where he's from. He rejected Tottenham to go there. What happens then if Barcelona say in the summer, we don't want to sign him or we can't afford to sign him? Is there any way where he comes back, signs a new contract, and he becomes the Traore that we had in the Europa League season?
I'd be amazed. I mean, I think the deal, it's not been signed and it's not done. But if he continues to show the form that he has and he doesn't break his leg or whatever, then he's going to go to Barcelona. It's basically everybody involved: Wolves, Barcelona, the agent, the player. They all want and expect this move to happen in the summer, basically. So while it hasn't been signed yet, I would expect it to go through.
Yeah, I mean, you're right on Neves. The fans can forgive the club for not sorting out Traore's contract and letting this situation happen. They won't forgive the club if Neves goes into the last 18 months of his contract. I think that is a situation that has to be avoided at all costs, whether he's sold for a massive fee in the summer, which we don't want, or ideally, new contract, 5 years, like Max Kilman. And it's not a topic of discussion that goes on all summer as a distraction.
Yeah, we all want that. Yeah, I don't think Neves, like Tim says, I can't see Neves dragging negotiations. It doesn't seem like that type of guy. He'd nip it in the bud and say, "This is what I want to do, and this is what I'm happy with." And then, I think he'd sort it out pretty quickly.
Well, his interview on Wolves TV was really insightful. It was a great interview that Dave Edwards did with him, and like when he was talking about his love for Wolves and how his family's settled and how he wants to come back here in the future. When he eventually does leave Wolves, obviously it'll be hopefully on good terms, and you think that he really does love the club. I think he's very close with Conor and the rest of the team. He's very much part of the dressing room. He talked about it being the best dressing room he's ever been involved in, and you just hope that, like you say, Wolves can get that tied down, and then that gives Wolves the contract that if someone comes in with a very big bid, they'll get the money that they need for it, and he'll be settled with his family. So let's hope that gets sorted out. Like you say, Tim, it goes into the last 18 months again. You're in all the power goes with the player then, doesn't it?
Yeah, but what I would say about Neves, he's a bit different to most other footballers. He's very grounded. He's got three kids already. He's 24. Yeah. Like I said, he swapped the Champions League for the Championship, and he bought into the project. And like Manny suggested, he wouldn't want to leave the club high and dry with a good price sale 12 months out from his deal. He loves the club, and he'd want to keep the club's best interests at heart. I really do believe that.
Fantastic. Tim, this question here, this is to do with player registration. The new rules that are apparently coming in, Wolves are only allowed to register 17 overseas player in a 25-man squad. In January, we registered 15 overseas players. Neto and Chiquinho will be over 21 and have to be registered after the next window, I'm told. How do you think this will affect transfer policy, and which players do you think will be moved on to make way for new talent?
Who would be moved on this summer? That's a good question. Like I said, they've already got a couple of players potentially moving on out of contract. They haven't got many players spare to be moving on. I think we'll definitely see changes in midfield, whether that's Moutinho, whether that's Neves moving on, whether that's Dendoncker moving on. And the other thing that's coming in this summer is the loan rules as well, which is not going to affect them massively, but it's definitely something to note that they can only loan 3 players to Grasshoppers next season, for example, rather than the 5 they've already got there.
5, about 15, isn't there?
Yeah. Plus the sporting director, plus whoever else.
And his wife.
Yeah. In terms of plans for the summer, that hasn't been discussed yet, but they'll be well on top of those rules, Dave, and in terms of the squad makeup for next year. And they've got a lot of young players coming through from the 23s who'll be helping to fill out the squad as well, I'm sure.
Talking about
the question as well to jump in on this. Before, Tim, you mentioned about saleable assets, and we really don't want Neves to be in that category. Who do you see as potential saleable assets? Because I think this time last year we were talking about the likes of Vinagre. Are we now talking about the likes of Ryan Giles, Dion Sanderson? Who do you see them using to raise a bit of cash? Is Morgan Gibbs-White in that category for the summer?
In terms of saleable assets, I mean, the ones at the top end are obviously Traore, who'd be, 30 million. Kilman, name your price tag, really. It's almost impossible for a kid who came in at, 75k or whatever it was. Because he's only had half a good season. I know people are already thinking 40 million for him, but I'm not sure anyone would pay that at this stage. But Kilman and then Neto, they're your massive saleable assets. I mean, it changes every year. We'd have said Jimenez a couple of years ago, and now he's hit the 30 mark, and he's not quite the player he was last season. And then in terms of last season they did really well with Rafa Mir's sale, brought him in for 1 million, sold him for 13. That's the kind of business that they really want to do. With the 23s, with the players they bring in, they loan them out, and they sell them on. Owen Otasawi, was another 3.5 to Club Brugge, which is unbelievable business. I mean, he hasn't kicked a ball for them. The two I would predict. Giles, they're gonna really give him a go. Bruno's a massive fan. They were really reluctant to let him out on loan again. Unfortunately, he's out of the Blackburn team at the moment, or he was the last time I checked. Anyway, last couple of games he's been on the bench, which is a real shame.
He came on and actually affected the game, and they won it 1-0.
He had a brilliant assist ratio, didn't he, at Cardiff?
At Cardiff, yeah, absolutely. He was playing further up the field at Cardiff on the left wing and made a great start. So he'll be given a go. With Marcel moving on, they'll see how Johnny does. There's potentially a gap there. I think Gibbs-White. I think ideally they'd love Sheffield United to come up and make him a big offer.
Right, they haven't got the money.
If he's going to be on the fringes of the first team, Bruno's had a good look at him, gave him a full pre-season, gave him lots of minutes, and they still loaned him out. So I guess the thing with Gibbs-White is, has a season in the Championship transformed him as a player and taken him to the next level, or has he just found his level, albeit he's doing exceptionally well? And Sanderson, again, you've got to look at the fact that he had a really good look at him in January, and he still decided to move him back out on loan again, and he's kept Totti Gomez in the squad. So that, for me, suggests that he might be vulnerable to a sale as well. So lots of big decisions to make in the summer. Like I said, you look at the squad now, 22, 23 senior players. They bring Gibbs-White, Sanderson and Giles in as well. There's just not enough room. So players will have to move on. And you'd say that the ones that are out on loan at the moment will be the most vulnerable.
Interesting. And what about Conor Ronan?
Yeah, interesting one. Like he's really, again, Bruno really liked him when he came back to Compton, and I'm sure I've heard Jeff Sheeba say before that he absolutely loves him, but he's just never quite had that chance. His preferred position is a 10, which Wolves haven't really played. Gibbs-White has suffered from that as well, with Wolves not really playing a 10. I'm desperate for him to find a home, really. I remember I spoke to him last summer, and he's been on loan to Portsmouth, Walsall, Slovakia, Grasshoppers, and now St Mirren. I mean, it's been an amazing journey for him, and I know he's embraced every challenge and he's loved it. But I think he got engaged with his missus last year, and they're desperate to just sort of settle down with a home, really, and it's an aspect you don't really think about. So I can't see him coming back to Wolves and getting a shot in the first team as much as I'd love him to. So hopefully, with how he's doing well at St Mirren, I mean, someone just said there he did get sent off, but he has been doing really well. So hopefully, he gets himself a really good move, because he's a fantastic little footballer.
That's quite good. Quite good for you to say, Manny. I mean, your thoughts on Gibbs-White?
Morgan Gibbs-White. He's got something like 7 goals or 5 assists or whatever it is. And I look at someone like William Jose. He's got 8 goals and 4 assists. We won't have him back, would we? And sometimes, the guy's got 8 goals in La Liga. So like Adama Traore, he's gone there and he's got an assist every game, and he couldn't get an assist a season for us. And it's a different ball game, the Premier League. And so, the Giles, the Sandersons, the Ronans, are they going to get game time to prove themselves in the Premier League and then be up to that standard? And we always are looking to try and bring in players that can hit the ground running and play for our team and do really well, rather than develop themselves. So I just can't see any of those players, I think if that's the future and we're going to try and make those players work, then that means we won't really be investing, because we don't need huge amount. I don't think we need a huge amount. We've got good backup if everyone's fit, and it's just a centre half, a striker, potentially another midfielder. That's 2 or 3 good quality players, and if those players come in, then the Ronans and those type of players will just be frozen out even more. So I agree. I can't really see a future for them at Wolves, where Wolves are.
The talent that they've produced is ridiculous. I mean, if Wolves were in the top half of the Championship, if they're where they've been for most of the past 40 years, you'd have Gibbs White in the team, you'd have Sanderson, Giles, Ronan, Kundal. They're producing really, really good players, but the standard is just so high to get into that Premier League squad. Kundal, he's made that one start, but I wouldn't be surprised if he got sent out on loan, next season. It's so hard for the academy. They're doing a fantastic job, and there's a really good group coming through. People who will have followed the 18s this season. They're having a great run, really talented bunch. But would you put money on more than one, or even one of them becoming a Premier League?
Who stands out for you in the actually 18s? Obviously, they've done amazing. I think it's Wolves' first FA Cup youth run to the semis since something like 2004. Who stands out for you, Tim?
A lot of them are playing for the 23s already. They're not actually, and the 18s are having a good season on their own. If they win all their games in hand, they'll be second in the table. So, and I'm told the 16s are pretty handy as well that are coming through. In terms of the 18s, Nathan Fraser up front, lad from Tetnall, just turned 17, scored 5 and 6. Really come on physically in the past few months. Worked a lot on his physicality. Spent last summer in the gym, and he looks it. He's a good finisher. Decent pace, decent skill. He looks pretty good. Harvey Griffiths in midfield looks like a real unit. He's running the show. Ollie Tipton in defence. There's a lot of local lads in there, and Steve Davis is doing a great job. People remember him formerly at Crewe.
Yeah.
To have him, they've got Darius Vassell, still a striker coach in that setup as well. So that they've got a really good setup there. If anyone is free next Wednesday night, I urge you to get yourselves to Old Trafford for that semi-final. Wolves are putting on free tickets with £3 coach, is it?
Yeah, £3 to the Feed Our Pack appeal. So it's basically free. It's all donated.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And, Dave, I think, 2005 was the last time they made the semis. That was when they had Wayne Hennessy, Mark Davis, Mark Little as well. And Southampton had like Walcott, Lallana, Leon Best and others. So the last time they got to the final was, I think, the 70s. They've only won it once in the club's entire history. They've only won the Youth Cup once, and that was when they beat Jimmy Greaves and Chelsea in 1957 or 58. Wow. So it's so rare. I think massive achievement for the club that they'll be shouting it from the rooftops if they beat Man United next week.
What do you think the odds are against you? Because they weren't big favourites against Tottenham, and they spanked them 3-0. Because Tottenham were huge favourites, wasn't they, at the time?
Yeah, definitely. I think they're above Man United in the table. I'm right in saying, although, like I said, because a lot of these guys play for the 23s every week, the under-18 table kind of tells a few lies, really. But it's just a shame it's away from home, and it's only one leg. So
it's a semi-final, but at Old Trafford, because obviously it's a home game for United. But I believe if Wolves did get through the finals, actually at Molineux, isn't it?
Well, it's ridiculous, Dave. Like they changed the rules for the pandemic, which makes complete sense. Because before it was 2 legs. But now it's gone down to 1. Great for Wolves if they're at home for the final, but it'd be massively unfair on the opposition, I think. But that's the rules this year. So, it's a one-off game at Old Trafford next Wednesday, 7 p.m.
I take it you'll be there, Tim?
Yes, mate, absolutely. Yeah, really look forward to it. They've got a fantastic group this year. So, I'm desperate for them to get through.
Fantastic. We heard it there. Let's try and get as many there on next Wednesday at Old Trafford. Paul, you've got a question for Tim about Raul. We spoke earlier that you wanted to ask.
Yeah, it kind of hurts me to ask it, actually, because we all love him. He's probably one of the greatest.
15 minutes left, by the way, because Tim's got on a call with America at 9, so we've got to finish bank on. Yeah.
He's probably one of the greatest players we've ever seen wear our club's colours. I want your opinion on, do you think his lack of output in terms of goals, assists, is that down to him being a victim of the style of the team, or is there another underlying issue along the lines of he might not be the same player that we had just over a year ago.
In terms of output, 5 goals and 3 assists is the most in the squad by 3. So he's got more goal involvements than, I think the next one is Hwang, who's on 5 goals, no assists. So Raul's on 5 goals, 3 assists. If you take, there's a few winners in there as well. So I think if you take his goals out of it, there's a lot of points left on the table. So obviously his numbers are down because the numbers he had in 2019-20 were just ridiculous. I mean, he was one of the most complete strikers in Europe. But to say, honestly, like, you know, Twitter is Twitter, but to see people saying he should never play for the club again or whatever, I just find it honestly, just watch that documentary and give your head a shake. I mean, honestly, it's just absolutely unbelievable. So in terms of him and his contribution to the team, what I would say, and what Bruno's spoken about interestingly, is that the headband he now has to wear for the rest of his career has affected his heading ability. So Wolves have gone from being the second highest crosses in the league to the second fewest. So only Leicester put in fewer crosses into the box than Wolves. And a big reason behind that is that Jimenez, in terms of how he heads the ball and the precision of where he puts it.
He hasn't got the feel, has he? You've seen a few headers that he's got frustrated. He put wide.
Well,
probably last year he would have put in.
I missed the game in question, but I think was it Southampton at home when he took his headband off at the end.
On the floor.
Brentford. And so yeah, it's not like he doesn't want to head the ball, because he's actually winning more headers than he's ever won in his Wolves career. You know, a lot of those in his own box. You know, his heading numbers are way up, but in terms of the precision, it's just not there. So that's so hence why they've changed their style. And he's playing a different role this year. I think if anyone had been out for 9 months with a very serious injury, and, you know, we'll watch closely how Johnny is in the next few weeks, it's going to take you an awful long time to get back to your best. If you've nearly died on the pitch, then that's going to take an emotional toll as well. So I think, considering what he's done for the club and the kind of person he is and the kind of talent he is, what he needs from everybody right now is support, not we need a new striker, not let's get him out of the team. And if fans think that, Jimenez will never see that, you know, when they post it on Twitter, players see everything.
It must really hurt that, you know, if you've seen that.
Well, you know, I noticed at the end of West Ham, he was straight down the tunnel. He was immediately down the tunnel straight after the game. And I don't know if he's seen any of the criticism that's been knocking around recently. Bruno's seen it and he's mentioned it. He mentioned that he noticed him and Dendoncker had got a lot of stick on Twitter. So the manager sees it. I wouldn't be surprised if Raul sees it as well. So I think
100% he sees it. You know, he does. I mean, I made the point, you know, we've only scored 26 goals, Dave, and people don't understand. So we're not a goal scoring team. Our goal scoring is relegation form. It's, you know, let's be honest, 26 goals is relegation. So in that, he's got 5 goals and 3 assists. He's actually probably got a higher percentage of involvement, even with all his problems, because we've scored such a small amount. So he's a bit victim of the style and the players he's had around him and the players who have been, you know, not delivering. And I think if he had Neto and Podence fully fit this season and playing from the start the whole season, then Jimenez's numbers would go up, I think, even with his problems. Yeah.
I think he suffers from a bit of a lack of a partnership as well. He had Jota in his first season. He had Traore in his second. And, you know, we spoke before, you know, about the rotation they've had either side of him. They tried to put Podence in the 10 in a 3-5-2, but then I think that takes away a bit of an attacking element from the rest of the team. So, you know, they're trying. And I you know, the quality will always shine through, and he works harder than anybody. So so patience, which is in short supply, is needed, I think.
100%, and I think that, you know, you if he'd have said when it happened that he would be back playing at Premier League football level, you know, he does add a lot to the team in the way he links up the play, holds up the ball. He's still running and chasing everything down. You know, I mean, Harry Kane went through something like a 9-game spell, didn't he not, without scoring? It happens to every striker. But he still popped up at Tottenham. We took that chance so well. So he's still got that finish in him. Tim, what are your thoughts on Fabio? Obviously, he came in on the 35 million. He's had a bit of stick. I think he looks stronger this year. I thought he was one of our best players at the weekend of West Ham.
Yeah, I thought he showed really good enthusiasm actually, which was lacking from some of the others, and brought energy, you know, where others didn't. I thought he was really unlucky that he came up against Kurt Zouma, who had the best game I've ever seen him have, and just blocked everything that came his way. So that was unfortunate. Yeah, I think the thing with Fabio, again, just that word patience. He's the type of player that he is. You know, he's not the quickest and he's not the most skillful. So it's not like it's an 18-year-old winger coming into the team, you know, like Chiquinho or someone who can show some flashy moves and get the crowd going and show some potential. He's a striker who's going to enjoy playing with his back to goal, and he's not, like I said, he's not that quick. So when is he going to hit his peak? I don't think he hits his peak for many, many years to come, to be honest. And I think if you look at where Raul Jimenez was when he was 19, nowhere. And it took until moving to Wolves age 27 for Jimenez's career to really lift off. So I don't want to say wait 8 years for Fabio Silva to come good, but at 19 is not going to be the finished product. But Wolves have created a problem for themselves there because they've spent so much money on a second choice striker who's a kid. So what do they do now? They had a little dabble with sending him out on loan in January, but if he goes out on loan and scores no goals in 10 games or something like Patrick Cutrone, it could be a disastrous spell for his career really, and his value, which is already pretty low, is just going to go through the floor. So they need him to start contributing and improving at some point in the next year to 18 months before they decide what they're going to do with him long term. You know, because like I said, Fosun are all about value for money, buying players cheap, increasing their value. If I look at Fabio Silva's value right now, it's not very high. So they need to decide what they're going to do with him. There's a really good player in there. I think he's fantastic at getting in shooting positions, and he was close to scoring sort of 6, 7, 8, 9 goals last season. And then I think he really was. I know he missed a couple of sitters, but he was really close to scoring quite a few. And if he'd done that, we'd be talking about a superstar, wouldn't we? And he'd be getting loads of attention. So yeah, he needs regular football. Whether he gets that now or at Wolves, that's a big decision for the summer. Fabio
isn't Fabio's problem; it's Wolves' problem. You know, the 35 million should, you know, gets labelled in against it. He's 18-year-old. I've got a son, 18-year-old. You know, every day that 18-year-olds change, they get stronger, they get fitter, they get brighter, and they do things year on year. And his growth will come, and it's just whether we've got the patience, you know, because we bought him for the money we bought him for. Or he should have. We wanted the finished article for 35 million, not, you know, work in progress. And it's not his fault. I think he's improved massively. He looks stronger, he looks fitter. Kurt Zouma, like Tim said, he's a beast of a centre half, and to play up against him. And I actually thought in the second half he was sort of getting the better of him. You know, and got into 2 or 3 positions where there were half chances, but he could have nicked an equaliser. So, you know, there's definitely a player there, and he's one that if we do let him go and he goes somewhere else, I think, you know, when he hits his peak, he will become a really, really good player. And I just hope he's still with us. But, you know, how that happens, only time will tell.
Will there be a moment where Bruno thinks, okay, maybe Jimenez is a bit isolated at times. Maybe he needs to try and develop a partnership. Could that person be Fabio Silva? I don't know what the stats are, but I think they've hardly spent any minutes on the pitch together at any point. No. And I wonder if that relationship was given a chance to develop, could it be something that works well for us?
But I would say, you know, in terms of a head coach to get the best out of him, then Bruno's that man. I think, you know, you look at what he did with someone like João Felix, or the host of players he's worked at different youth levels, Bernardo Silva, Cancelo.
Something to do with Ruben Diaz today, or
Ruben Diaz as well. Yeah. Some guy called Renato Sanchez as well. So, you know, he's worked with all of them at various age groups, and he'll be working really closely together.
What's the backroom staff like, Tim, compared to Nuno's reign? Because you got Tony Roberts. Roberts, you got his brother in there, Lewis, you know, and Tony Roberts seems really vocal, and he connects with the fans on Twitter and stuff, and he likes to have a, you know, what do you think of him?
Yeah, I mean, with COVID, it's just been impossible to spend time with people. You know, Wolves are still in Wolves are still sort of in a bubble, and they've got red zones at matches. So it's in terms of contact, it's been almost impossible. Other things are starting to open up. But yeah, I have interviewed Tony Roberts in person, and he's a fantastic character. He really is.
Yeah.
And people, he's sort of old school in that approach, but in terms of his methods, he's extremely modern and forward thinking. And Wolves went from conceding 14 from set pieces last season to now I think it's 3, although they had the recent glut of 3 in 3 games. But that's down to Tony Roberts, who works on that as well. He's, if people don't know, as well as goalkeeping coach, he's set piece coach, and he does a lot on the touchline as well. People might see him during matches. So yeah, there's a few interesting characters in there. Like you say, Manny, his brother's in there. They've got a very young analyst in his early 20s as well. I see a couple of the analysts come up and watch the game in the press box by me as well. So yeah, looking forward to meeting them all properly, really, and get to know them better. But a very hard-working, analytical bunch is how I would sum them up.
Fantastic. And we've literally just got 5 minutes to go. Last 5 minutes of the show, because as I say, Tim has got a work call with the USA coverage on a slightly different time zone that he's got to get off for. So final thoughts, Tim, on the remainder of the season, and who's your player of the season so far?
God, that's a good one. The 3 I've thought of for the past few months were Sarr, Neves, and Kilman. They're
pretty much the whole fan base would probably say the same.
Yeah, I think they really stand out, don't they?
Yeah.
You can make a case for a couple more. Saiss has had a great season, like we said. Cody's had a really great season as well.
He finished best season, Cody.
Semedo's been much improved. Aït-Nouri's been a bit of a revelation for me as well, to be honest.
Yeah. Semedo's had a good season, like you said.
Yeah, I'd say
last season when it was just Neto.
Yeah.
Only one person.
Probably Sarr, just because he's not only has he been in the top 3 keepers in the league, probably, but he's also changed how Wolves play, which is something we've never really seen before, I think, at Wolves. In terms of their aggression on the front foot, in terms of being a sweeper keeper. He's so different to Patricio, and he's changed the way that other players have played as well. Conor Cody used to come and drop deep on the keeper's toes constantly, and doesn't have to do that now, which I think has helped him defensively, because there's a smaller gap behind him for him to worry about, because he knows Sarr's going to be off his line. So little stuff like that, I think he's been a revelation, and he's a good character as well. So honestly, £6.8 million. I mean,
unbelievable.
It's crazy, and it's sort of, we talk about Silva and Semedo being overpriced, and yeah, they were, but the amount of bargains that George
Aït-Nouri, 10 million quid.
Honestly, Moutinho for
5 million.
Vinagre was 2 million or whatever, and now Sarr for 6.8. It's just one of the signings of the century, that is.
Right, just finally, thanks to everyone that's been watching the chat. We've got, been up around about 250 watching the whole show, which is amazing, which is fantastic. And I know lots of you will watch this back. On the catch-up, it'll also be out on the Always Wolves podcast. So if you're travelling anywhere, driving, at work, you can listen to it back on there and watch it back. Obviously, we want to send our thanks to Tim for coming on the show. Manny and Paul, thank you as well for your contribution. Been absolutely brilliant. As Phil Painter says here, many thanks, Dave, Manny, Paul, Tim. Very informed, great Q&A session. Thank you very much. Joe saying been really insightful. Great work, Tim. And also Joe says great reading The Athletic. Just quickly, Tim, if people want to get onto your content out on The Athletic, how can they do that?
Oh God, just get to the website, or I'll stick links on Twitter all the time. So just follow one of them. I'm sure there's some kind of introductory offer if people want to give it a go. So yeah, no, thanks for having me on, guys. It's been great.
Brilliant. Who's it? Before you go, who's your front 3 for Saturday, Alex? Go on.
I think Neto will start, and I think Pedence will start as well.
Who's the striker?
Oh, I think Jimenez. Yeah,
brilliant. Okay. All right,
fantastic.
They'll win. They'll definitely win. And yeah, they've got the next 6 are against bottom half teams. So there's a good little potential.
And we've done well against the bottom half teams this season, haven't we? So let's keep it going. It's not all lost.
And Europe still within touch. If we put a string of results, anything's still possible. Still almost a third of the season to go. If you've enjoyed the video,
Dave, that's the spirit.
You've got to be positive. You've got to believe.
Dave, we will get through, and we'll get 3 Ukrainian sides in the in the first rounds, won't we? That's what will happen.
If you've enjoyed the video, please smash a like. And I say you can follow Manny, Paul, and Tim. I saw on Twitter there's actually, Tim, there was an offer from the Athletic. I think it's for £1 to get involved.
You know better than me. I'm no salesman, Dave. You know better than me, mate.
I saw that on Twitter earlier on. So there's an offer on at the moment. So grab that. It's some brilliant content. Tim does a lot of really good stuff on there. I'm a subscriber myself, and absolutely brilliant. Thanks for everyone in the chat. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Manny. Thanks, Tim. I'm going to shut it down because I know you've got your call to America at 9 p.m. Hopefully, you'll come on again in the future. I know you're going to do the your Wolves 11 at some point with us. Brilliant.
Yes,
Cheers,
mate,
pal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Always.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon.